The marble corridors of the Capitol building had never witnessed anything quite like what was about to unfold in Committee Room 216. What started as a routine oversight hearing on federal spending accountability was about to become the most devastating political execution in modern American history. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, sat behind the committee chairman's desk like a queen surveying her domain. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her navy Armani suit pressed to perfection, and her eyes gleamed with the predatory confidence of someone who had destroyed political careers for breakfast every morning for 3 decades. Across the mahogany table sat Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, adjusting his glasses with the unhurried precision of a man who had all day and nothing to prove. His rumpled gray suit looked like it had survived Hurricane Katrina. His white hair was slightly askew, and his weathered hands rested quietly on a worn leather briefcase that seemed almost quaint in the high-tech committee room. Smash that subscribe button because what you're about to witness will restore your faith in constitutional justice. This 71-year-old Louisiana lawyer is about to remind Washington that some people still read the Constitution, and when they do, the swamp creatures better take cover. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Pelosi had arrived with an entourage of 12 staff members, 5 lawyers, and enough briefing books to stock a law library. Her team arranged documents with military precision, each folder color-coded and indexed for maximum political impact. CNN's cameras caught every detail of her preparation ritual, the practiced smile, the confident gestures, the way she surveyed the room like a general preparing for battle. Kennedy had arrived alone, carrying nothing but that battered briefcase and what appeared to be a pocket constitution worn smooth from decades of use. To the casual observer, he looked like someone's grandfather who had wandered into the wrong building. His Louisiana drawl was thick as molasses when he greeted the committee staff, and his easy smile made him seem harmless as a Sunday school teacher. The liberal media had already written their headlines. Pelosi schools backwards, Senator, read the prepared CNN chyron. MSNBC had their talking points ready about Southern ignorance meeting California sophistication. The Washington Post had assigned their best political writer to capture what they expected to be another humiliating defeat for flyover country politics. What they didn't know was that John Kennedy had been preparing for this exact moment for months, and the briefcase sitting innocuously beside him contained enough evidence to topple not just Nancy Pelosi, but half the Democratic establishment in Washington. But Kennedy wasn't in any hurry. Like a master chess player who could see 20 moves ahead, he was perfectly content to let his opponent make the first mistake. And Nancy Pelosi, drunk on her own power and convinced of her intellectual superiority, was about to give him exactly what he needed. The hearing was scheduled to review federal spending priorities and oversight mechanisms, dry, technical stuff that usually puts C-SPAN viewers to sleep. But Pelosi had requested this hearing specifically to humiliate Kennedy, who had been asking uncomfortable questions about Democratic spending bills for months. She wanted to destroy him publicly, to make an example of what happened when backwoods politicians dared to challenge the Washington establishment. As the cameras rolled and the gallery filled with political insiders eager to watch the slaughter, neither Pelosi nor the media had any idea they were about to witness the complete destruction of one of the most powerful politicians in American history. The gentleman from Louisiana was about to show them what happened when you brought a gavel to a constitutional gunfight. The hearing began with standard procedural language, but Pelosi's tone carried an edge that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade as she opened with what she clearly intended to be a killing blow. "Senator Kennedy," she began, her words dripping with California condescension, "I've reviewed your recent statements about federal spending, and frankly I find them both ignorant and dangerous. Your backwards Louisiana politics might play well with your uneducated constituents, but this is Washington, where actual expertise matters." The room stirred. Even by DC standards, it was a brutal opening shot. Pelosi had just called Kennedy ignorant and his voters uneducated on live television. The press gallery erupted with furious typing as reporters sensed blood in the water. Kennedy sat perfectly still, his hands folded over his briefcase, his expression as calm as a Louisiana lake at dawn. When he finally spoke, his drawl was thicker than usual, each word dripping with dangerous politeness. "Well now, Madam Speaker," he said, his voice carrying the musical cadence of the bayou, "that's mighty interesting. I do appreciate a good education lecture from someone who's clearly done her homework." He paused, cleaning his glasses with a handkerchief that had seen better days, and continued with devastating gentleness. "Speaking of education, ma'am, didn't you attend Trinity College? Fine institution. Though I'm curious, did they teach constitutional law there, or was that perhaps optional?" Pelosi's smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. Senator, I don't need lectures about the Constitution from someone who clearly doesn't understand how modern government works. Modern government? Kennedy repeated the words like he was testing their flavor. That's a fascinating phrase. See, where I come from, we still use the old government, you know, the one with 3 branches, separation of powers, that dusty old document with amendments and such. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kennedy's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel beneath the velvet now. But you mentioned expertise, Madam Speaker, so let me ask you something specific. Kennedy reached into his briefcase with deliberate slowness. Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution. Can you recite it for us? Pelosi's face reddened. I don't have time for your civics quiz, Senator. We have serious business to conduct. Kennedy's smile never wavered. Oh, we surely do have serious business. Very serious indeed. He pulled out the first folder from his briefcase, its tabs marked with dates and dollar signs. See that section I mentioned, Article 1, Section 7, that's the part about how spending bills have to originate in the House. Your House, Madam Speaker. The silence that followed was deafening. Every camera in the room zoomed in on Pelosi's face as she realized Kennedy wasn't some bumbling Southern fool. He was a constitutional lawyer who had just set a trap, and she had walked right into it. Which brings me to these folders, Kennedy continued, his drawl somehow becoming even more pronounced. Funny thing about expertise, ma'am, sometimes the most important expertise is knowing how to read. He opened the first folder with surgical precision, revealing documents that made several people in the gallery gasp. Financial records, classified briefings, internal memos. It was immediately clear that Kennedy had come prepared for war. Now, Kennedy said, his voice taking on the patient tone of a teacher addressing a particularly difficult student, since you mentioned expertise in education, why don't we have ourselves a little lesson about federal spending? I think the American people might find it illuminating. Pelosi's hands gripped the edge of the committee table, her knuckles white with strain. The predator had suddenly become the prey, and everyone in the room could sense the shift. The gentleman from Louisiana had just fired the opening shot in what would become the most devastating political takedown in congressional history. But Kennedy wasn't done warming up. He had 6 more folders in that briefcase, and each one contained evidence that would peel away another layer of Nancy Pelosi's carefully constructed facade. Let's start with something simple, Kennedy said with terrifying pleasantness. Like how a woman who makes $174,000 a year somehow accumulated a net worth of $120 million. Because, Madam Speaker, that's what I call modern mathematics. Comment below if you've ever wondered how politicians get rich on government salaries. Kennedy opened the first folder with the reverence of a priest handling holy scriptures, except these scriptures contained evidence of what might be the largest congressional trading scandal in American history. The folder was thick, meticulously organized, and color-coded with the precision of a federal prosecutor building a RICO case. Madam Speaker, Kennedy began, his Louisiana drawl soft as silk but sharp as a razor, you and your husband have quite the investment portfolio. Remarkable instincts for market timing, really. He pulled out the first document, holding it so the cameras could clearly see the Congressional Financial Disclosure seal. This here shows your husband Paul's trading activity over the past 5 years. Now I'm just a simple country lawyer, but even I can spot patterns that would make Warren Buffett weep with envy. Pelosi tried to interrupt, but Kennedy's voice cut through with polite authority. According to these records, y'all executed 347 individual stock trades with a success rate of 98.2%. That's mathematically extraordinary, considering the best hedge fund managers in the world average about 60%. The press gallery was frantically scribbling notes. A 98.2% success rate was statistically impossible without inside information. Kennedy let that sink in before continuing. Let's start with something recent, Kennedy said, pulling out a timeline that looked like evidence in a murder trial. January 15th, 2023. Paul purchases $5 million in NVIDIA call options. January 16th, 2023. You attend a classified briefing on the CHIPS Act semiconductor subsidies. Curious timing, wouldn't you say? Pelosi's face had gone pale, but she attempted to maintain her composure. My husband makes independent investment decisions based on public information. Kennedy's laugh was soft and devastating. Public information? Ma'am, let me show you what public information looks like. He produced another document. This is the public record of that classified briefing, redacted naturally. But this, he held up another paper, this is what you actually discussed in that closed session. Specifically, which companies would receive the largest CHIPS Act subsidies. The room erupted in whispers. Kennedy had somehow obtained classified briefing materials. Paul's NVIDIA options generated $4.1 million in profit when the CHIPS Act passed 3 weeks later. Kennedy continued with relentless precision. That's a 78% return in less than a month. Either your husband is the greatest investor in human history, or someone's been sharing homework answers. But Kennedy was just getting started. He pulled out a thick stack of trading records that seemed to go on forever. "Let's take a little trip down memory lane," he said, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller settling in for a long tale. March 2020. COVID lockdowns are being discussed in classified briefings. March 12th. Paul buys $1.2 million in Zoom stock. March 15th. You vote for lockdown measures. Zoom stock increases 600%. Profit $7.2 million. Each revelation was more damning than the last. Kennedy had apparently been tracking every trade, cross-referencing them with classified briefings and congressional votes. The pattern was undeniable and devastating. June 2021. Infrastructure bill discussions in closed session. June 10th. Paul buys Caterpillar construction equipment stock. June 15th. You fast-track infrastructure legislation through committee. Caterpillar stock jumps 34%. Another $2.8 million profit. Pelosi's lawyers were frantically whispering in her ear, but she waved them away with visible irritation. "Senator, this is completely inappropriate. My family's finances are private." Kennedy's response was delivered with the patience of a Sunday school teacher correcting a wayward student. "Private, ma'am. When the Speaker of the House uses classified information to generate millions in stock profits, that becomes very public very quickly." He pulled out another devastating piece of evidence. "This is particularly interesting. December 2022. Defense spending bill discussions. Paul buys $3.2 million in Lockheed Martin stock. 2 days later, you add $50 billion in additional defense spending to the omnibus bill. Lockheed Martin gets the lion's share of contracts. Paul's investment doubles. The mathematical precision of the timing was impossible to ignore. Every trade seemed to occur exactly 1 or 2 days before major congressional actions that would affect those specific companies. But here's my personal favorite," Kennedy said, his eyes twinkling with something that might have been amusement. September 2022. You attend classified briefings on Chinese military threats. That same day, Paul invests heavily in defense contractors. Within a week, you're on every news show talking about the Chinese threat, drumming up support for defense spending. Your husband's portfolio increased by $8.7 million. The room was deadly silent now, except for the sound of furious note-taking from the press section. What Kennedy was describing wasn't just insider trading, it was systematic manipulation of congressional policy for personal profit. "Now I've done the math," Kennedy continued, his drawl becoming more pronounced as he delivered the killing blow. "Over 5 years, these perfectly timed trades generated approximately $52 million in profits for the Pelosi family. That's remarkable consistency for someone who supposedly doesn't discuss work at home." He pulled out one final document from the first folder. "This is a comparison analysis. Your trading success rate compared to notable